Best friends since childhood, Max, Sarah, and Ben were excited. They had been planning this trip for months, coordinating their schedules and making sure everything was perfect. It was a rare opportunity for them to escape their busy lives and reconnect. A weekend at a secluded cabin, a perfect escape from the city. Nestled deep in the woods, the cabin promised tranquility and a break from the hustle and bustle of urban life.
Sarah had found the place online, a steal for such a charming cabin by the lake. She had spent hours browsing through countless listings, but this one stood out. The pictures showed a cozy interior, a beautiful lake view, and plenty of outdoor activities. They couldn't wait to spend their days hiking and their nights sharing stories under the stars. The thought of roasting marshmallows over a campfire and reminiscing about old times filled them with joy. This was going to be the best trip ever. They had packed everything they needed: hiking gear, board games, and enough food to last the weekend.
The car rumbled down the dusty road, kicking up leaves. The journey itself was an adventure with winding roads and scenic views that made the drive enjoyable. Inside, laughter filled the air. They sang along to their favorite songs, shared jokes, and talked about their plans for the weekend. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees, they finally arrived. The golden hues of the sunset added a magical touch to the moment. The cabin was old, with a weathered wooden porch and a rusty swing. It had a rustic charm that made it feel like a step back in time. Vines crawled up the sides, giving it an eerie charm. The overgrown greenery added to the sense of seclusion and mystery. With a mix of excitement and apprehension, they unloaded the car, eager to explore their home for the next few days. They couldn't wait to see what adventures awaited them in this hidden gem of a cabin. The cabin's interior was cozy, filled with the scent of pine and dust. A fireplace dominated one wall, promising warmth and crackling fires. The kitchen, though small, had everything they needed. Upstairs, 2 bedrooms awaited, their beds covered in faded quilts. The friends quickly unpacked, each claiming a bed. They agreed to sleep downstairs tonight, closer to the fire. After a delicious dinner cooked over a crackling fire, they decided to explore the area. The lake shimmered in the moonlight, its surface like black glass. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, whispering secrets through the trees. They returned to the cabin, a sense of peace settling over them. They were miles from anyone, truly alone. Later that night, huddled around the glowing embers of the fire, they shared stories.
Max, always the jokester, told a spooky tale of a hitchhiker who disappeared. Sarah, with her love for the supernatural, recounted a local legend about the cabin. It was said to be haunted by the ghost of a logger who had died there tragically.
Ben, the skeptic, scoffed at their tales, but a shiver ran down his spine.
As the fire died down, casting long shadows that danced on the walls, they decided to call it a night. The silence of the woods pressed in around them as they drifted off to sleep, the only sound the occasional crackle of cooling logs. A piercing scream shattered the night. Ben bolted upright, heart pounding.
It was Sarah, her eyes wide with terror. She pointed a trembling finger towards the window. "I saw something! A face! Watching us!" she gasped.
Max grabbed a flashlight, his own fear evident. "Don't be silly," he said, his voice shaky. It was probably just a branch. They checked outside, but found nothing.
Despite their attempts to rationalize the experience, a sense of unease lingered. They tried to go back to sleep, but every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind sent shivers down their spines. The hours crawled by slowly, each one filled with a growing sense of dread. The next day, determined to shake off the previous night's events, they went for a hike. They hoped the fresh air and exercise would clear their minds and dispel the lingering unease that had settled over them. The woods were beautiful, the air crisp and cool. The sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. Birds chirped merrily, and the rustling of leaves created a soothing symphony, but the eerie feeling persisted, following them like a shadow. It was as if the forest itself was alive, watching their every move, whispering secrets they couldn't quite hear.
I keep hearing whispers, my name being called from the depths of the forest. It's like the trees are speaking to me, trying to tell me something.
Max swore he saw fleeting glimpses of movement in the trees, shadows darting just beyond their sight. He tried to convince himself it was just his imagination, but the feeling was too strong to ignore.
Did you see that? Something just moved over there. It was quick, like a flash, but I know I saw it.
Ben, though trying to remain skeptical, couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made his heart race.
This is ridiculous. But I can't help feeling like we're being followed. It's like there's something out there, just beyond our sight, watching us.
They returned to the cabin early, a sense of urgency driving them. The once inviting forest now felt like a maze of shadows and unseen eyes, and they couldn't shake the feeling of being pursued. They were no longer just uneasy, they were afraid. The fear was palpable, a heavy weight that pressed down on them, making every step back to the cabin feel like a race against an unseen threat. Back at the cabin, they decided to investigate. If there was something strange happening, they needed to know. Their search led them to a trapdoor hidden beneath a rug in the living room. It was locked, a heavy padlock securing it.
What do you think is down there?
Curiosity outweighing their fear, they searched for the key. They found it in a dusty drawer, an old, tarnished thing. Their hands trembled as they unlocked the padlock and slowly lifted the heavy trapdoor. A musty, cold air wafted up, carrying with it the scent of decay and something else. Something unidentifiable and unsettling. The basement was dark and damp, cobwebs hanging from every corner. Max found a lantern and lit it, the flickering light casting grotesque shadows on the walls. There was a single item down there, an ornately carved antique mirror, its surface tarnished with age. The mirror seemed to draw their gaze, holding them captive in its depths.
The reflection, it's not us.
Max and Ben exchanged uneasy glances. She was right. Their reflections were wrong, twisted, their eyes glowing with a malevolent light.
What is this?
This can't be real. It just can't be.
Panic surged through them. The air was thick with fear, and every shadow seemed to move with a life of its own. The group huddled together, their breaths coming in short, sharp gasps as they tried to make sense of their surroundings. They turned to flee, but the trapdoor slammed shut with a deafening boom. They were trapped. The sound reverberated through the room, echoing their sense of doom. Each of them felt the weight of the situation pressing down on their shoulders. A blood-curdling scream echoed through the basement. It was a scream that seemed to come from the very depths of despair, sending chills down their spines. The scream was a stark reminder of the danger they were in. The mirror, now glowing with an eerie light, showed a terrifying scene. It was as if the mirror was a portal to another world, a world filled with horrors beyond their imagination. The light from the mirror cast long, twisted shadows on the walls. The reflection of Sarah was being dragged towards the mirror's surface, her hand reaching out desperately as if seeking their help. Her eyes were wide with terror, and her mouth was open in a silent scream. The sight was almost too much to bear.
Help me, please. Sarah's voice was filled with desperation, a plea that cut through the darkness like a knife. It was a cry for help that seemed to echo endlessly in the confined space.
The mirror rippled like water, then returned to normal. It was as if the mirror had a life of its own, a malevolent force that was toying with them. The room seemed to grow colder, and the sense of dread deepened. Sarah was gone. Max and Ben pounded on the trapdoor, their screams swallowed by the thick wood. Their fists bruised and bloodied, but they didn't stop. They couldn't stop. The trapdoor was their only hope of escape. They were trapped with whatever evil lurked in the darkness, the oppressive atmosphere pressing down on them. The air was heavy, almost suffocating, and every creak and groan of the old house seemed amplified.
No! Sarah! Max's voice was raw with emotion, a mix of fear and anger. He couldn't believe what was happening. It felt like a nightmare, one he couldn't wake up from.
We need to get out of here! Now! Ben's voice was urgent, filled with a sense of impending doom. He knew they had to act fast, or they might never see the light of day again.
Their desperate cries echoed through the basement, mixing with the sinister silence that now surrounded them. The silence was almost tangible, a living entity that seemed to mock their fear. They were alone, trapped in a nightmare with no end in sight.